Nice. Okay. So, welcome to the podcast, the FlawedCast, if you'll call it. You're here with Jay and Chris Summerville, who's going to be joining us today for our episode. Chris is a emergency responder working with paramedics, and he's just going to give us a little bit of a background as to how he got to where he is now and what the struggles of life were in terms of getting to where he is. So, Chris, I'll give it to you to sort of introduce yourself if you want.
Sure, yeah. I lost you there for a second in the thing, but I think I picked up where you're going off. So yeah, my name's Chris. I'm 30 now, Jay. And that may creep you out since when we first met, it was probably, I think, 8 years ago, dude.
Yeah. It was certainly a time ago where
Yeah.
I feel like, my bones worked better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in much better shape, and my metabolism was better.
Yeah.
Hangovers didn't last at all. Yeah, it
What
was
even
great.
were they?
Yeah. And then I did a year of Res Life after you. I was one of the SRAs, which was really fun and cool. And then journeyed a bit. I went to paramedicine eventually, and I've been working as a paramedic now part time for it'll be 5 years this August. And
Okay.
part of the paramedic progression is we always have kind of steps on where we want to get. I am looking at obtaining full-time status July 1st. I'm just waiting to hear back from my management to say, yeah, you have enough seniority, dude. You're going to get a spot, which is it's exciting.
That's
Payday's off.
awesome.
Right.
That
Yeah.
that is good. So
Um,
you and I know each other from working in residence life background at Fleming College, but from what I'm hearing here, it wasn't a direct connection from college graduation into the paramedic field. Is that correct, or were you pretty much hired on right after?
No, well, so I was only in when I met you in Res Life, I was in pre-health sciences, and I didn't end up getting accepted into paramedics, so I took a plan B, which
Okay.
was fitness and health promotion. So essentially, I learned to be life coach, nutrition, wellness, fitness instructor, yada yada. I ended up
Oh,
actually teaching and running fitness classes for paramedics that I now work with, which is interesting.
oh, that's actually a really interesting fact.
Small world,
It's a
worlds.
I didn't know that about you. It's an interest of mine as well as the health and wellness side of things, and I for a long time considered getting into the fitness side. But it's interesting that you end up now working with people who I guess you would have been your clients before.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was their gym teacher a couple days here or there or whatever, or TA, and yeah, it's funny to look back on that in small world and such. And so I took that, I graduated from that, and then I got into paramedicine immediately after that. And I actually it was a 4 month period from when I finished doing my ride outs to when I
Mhm.
got hired. So paramedics are required to do about 2 semesters of academic work, which they're actually expanding that to 3 year program nowadays. But and then you do about 500 hours riding out in the truck with two full-time paramedics, and essentially they assess you and determine whether or not you've got the stones to do the job. And I was successful, barely. My
That's got to be a pretty high pressure assessment. If
oh
you're
man,
right out there in the truck with them, that's a lot of eyes watching in very high intensity situations. I can't even imagine what that pressure would be like.
it was fascinating because they first start you off with you just observe, like, kind of see how they do things, and then eventually they turn to you one day and they say, are you ready to take a call and you know do more than just vitals and actually start assessing patients. And yeah, I'll be honest, I came out of school being I was really really good academically, and I was very good practically. I used to get 90+% on scenarios, and well, the lab is nothing near the real world of riding out the trucks, let me tell you. So I had to learn the hard way, let me tell you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I believe it. That goes above and beyond my experience with having to deal with things. But I equate that to my time working with sort of the railroad is about the best high intensity scenario that I've ever participated in, and like in the same way, like when you're being trained, you're basically in a classroom environment for a while, and things are like academically, whoa, that worked for me, I'm fine in the class. But as soon as you step foot onto the train and you're there with two seasoned guys who know what they're doing, and they're very much looking over your shoulder and making sure that you don't screw up, because you've got lives in your hands. And it's a bit of a different scenario when you're driving a train, but no one's immediately in danger at that moment, you would hope. But the challenges of being out there and being responsible for those people's lives that you're caring for in your position, and the pressure of trying to like make sure you're doing 100% of the right thing all the time, because if it's easy right up until you do that 1% wrong, and then everything goes sideways.
People are expecting you to get you home safely, man. Did you do a little bit of emergency response doing that job, or?
Not in like the same way. Like we worked very closely with like the sort of emergency responders on various scenes that might come up. So we would have close relations with like the police and paramedics who might come by. And fortunately for myself, I didn't have to deal too closely with any emergency response type stuff that was unassisted, we'll call it. So that I can be thankful for. I always have a deep appreciation for anyone in the emergency response field, because, whether it be in my job working on trains or, working now in a post-secondary student residence scenario, it's those people who come to my rescue when things get bad, kind of thing. So
it's fascinating how very closely related my events or emergency. How close, like Res Life, where you just get a phone call or a radio call that you have to go and respond. They are in a different capacity. Res Life, you were a bit of a trifecta of what we work with now, and even more than a trifecta. I mean, you're supposed to be a counselor. You're supposed to be mock security. Rule enforcement, event planning. It was quite a fascinating experience, that's for sure.
It's a very difficult job / career to describe to anybody who doesn't understand it, because they're like, well, what do you do? And it's more like, I could give you the list of what I don't. That's shorter. But
yeah.
So it's interesting, the kind of person that goes into like becoming like an emergency responder, because obviously, like if we're looking at it, you're there dealing with a lot of, I mean, primarily there can't be too many what I would call, positives to your position in terms of like what you do on a daily basis. Like you're essentially putting yourself out there on the line for the sake of other people and trying to make sure that they're okay, which has to be very mentally draining on you. And like the reward comes with when you do a good job at the end of the day, but you know that you're starting off at sort of a fairly bottom of the ladder kind of situation. You've got to climb up to that positive reward and hope that you even, get there, kind of thing. So what does it take to get someone into that position? What brings you to that kind of line of work, and how do you feel like you ended up there?
I think that's a great lead-off question. I find a lot of people have a lot of questions because their real experience when it comes to EMS is generally what they see in movies and television, which is highly Americanized. So Canada has a very different response, and even actually provincially, they have different expectations and different levels of training and stuff for my job. But I'll dive that into a little bit later. You asked me what type of person it takes to get into this job. The fun thing about paramedics, and it was kind of an eye-opening, is, as you can imagine, a lot of us are type A personalities. We are very, active and engaging. We will jump into a conversation. We'll be loud. We'll be proud. But there are also very, very successful paramedics who are type B, who are very well reserved, very calm, very collective, and very observant. And it's fascinating. There is no one image of what paramedics are like. What led me into being a paramedic for sure was my mother was, when I was growing up, she was a 911 dispatcher for Toronto Paramedic Services.
Okay.
And, so, I've been hearing about 911 emergency medicine for a very, very long time. This led me into wanting to be a firefighter, naturally, because that's the dream. But actually, when I was
I gotta say, and I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off here, but I gotta say, there's something about I think the axe that is a draw to the firefighter scenario.
Well, when I was sorry, when I was in fire school, because I did that straight out of high school, we did the whole calendar thing and the whole pompous macho-ness of it all, and it was a lot of fun. But it was actually, I had an opportunity to ride out with North Oshawa Fire Department, and we did respond to medical calls, and I discovered that I was one of the most highly trained in my crew, simply because I did emergency response for Durham College. They trained me to be, at the time, I was called an advanced medical first responder, or it's kind of one step between, it's above standard first aid, between paramedic kind of thing. And so yeah, like I did some medical calls, and I always got frustrated that the paramedics would come and kind of take the patient away and, no, it's okay, you can go away now, yada yada yada. Yeah. And I was more interested in kind of figuring out the mystery of what's going on with them. And it wasn't until I was working, I bartended and served at a restaurant called Lone Star for 7 years.
I think I remember that. Was it Python or?
No, it was Rattlesnake. That was
Rattlesnake. It was Rattlesnake. Yeah. I remember Rattlesnake.
They had a really good team and oriented environment where you create this persona, and they had call names that you weren't allowed to call each other by Jay or Chris. You had to be Rattlesnake or whatever you picked from a list. And I picked that. I love snakes. They were at the time one of my favorite animals, and so I picked that, and that persona just definitely ruled with me, and it was a good time. I was serving one time. I had a party in the back, and I had about 5 tables going on, and I noticed straight up a movie happens. I hear, "Oh my God, she's choking," and I look over, and then there's this elderly woman who's literally sitting there going, and I see someone try to do the Heimlich maneuver or upper body thrust, because that's copyrighted now. Okay. And they were doing it extremely poorly. Like the lady was still seated in her chair, and they were trying to gain. And I remember just walking over, and I had sunglasses because I worked a bit of the patio as well. And I was like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And I just like threw my sunglasses on the table and like picked this lady up, kicked the chair out of the way, and I just started doing the upper body thrusts like I've been trained to do before. Yeah. And she coughs up, she vomits a little bit everywhere, and we sit her back down, and she's able to breathe and talk and whatnot. And looking back now with the training I do have, my God, I missed on so many more assessments that I should have been doing, but I digress. And I remember being really freaked out about that, and people were high-fiving me and all this stuff. Oh, hello, Spartacus. This is my cat, Spartacus. He's been with me now for about 7 years. Yeah.
That's nice.
So that was my first taste that was my first save. It was this elderly lady who was choking, and I did Heimlich maneuver, and ever since then I was kind of hooked on the adrenaline rush of and
slight adrenaline junkie, is it?
I guess, but not in a sense of jumping off a cliff into water so I can hurt myself or any sort of Evel Knievel nonsense, but yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there is a bit of an excitement where you're able to respond to something and improve the outcome.
Yeah, that's for sure. So so that was your first sort of experience with like the life-saving thing that might have pulled you into it. Was there do you ever find that like I don't know, so that was sort of a more adult you. What was like child Chris like? What did child Chris go through that might have led him down this path, and what kind of things do you feel that you sort of struggled with when you were making these decisions and trying to figure out who you were?
It's interesting. Growing up as a child, you would never believe me if I told you this, because I'm a very loud and talkative person. When I walk into the room, I'm there. I was a very shy and quiet kid. It wasn't until about puberty.
That is surprising to me. That's very surprising to me.
Yeah, it wasn't about puberty. It was a combination of puberty, and I lived with my aunt and uncle one summer up in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. And essentially, I just worked the land, and we chopped down a bunch of trees, hauled them out to the back, burned them, blah blah blah, and whatnot. And I gained a lot of confidence through them. But growing up, I didn't realize it until now that I'm an adult and I look back. I grew up with what's called childhood trauma, and that's the proper definition for it. And growing up in my home, it's funny because you can downplay what you went through just based on observing other people's lifestyles and what they went through. And my parents separated when I was really young, before I even have a memory of it, really. And so I didn't know any difference, and so there was that separated child, and that was kind of a new thing growing up. But I was raised in an environment where there was yelling and screaming was a way that you expressed yourself, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes physical violence as well. And love my mom to death. She did her best by being a single mom of two at the age of, I guess, my age, 30. So I can imagine being a single parent, doing my job I do now and raising young children on my own.
I often think, like, my own experience with that. My parents divorced when I was very young as well. I could remember it. My sister not so much, but I think it was 4 years old when that happened, and like, it has a significant and profound effect on you. And even if it's not like to the extent of, well, I can't say I remember most of it because I was still very young, but like there was definitely yelling and screaming and things, and like that comes off as having like an effect on you one way or another, right? There's always like some kind of, and it's no one's, I don't think it's anyone's intention or fault around that, but it does, as a child with like a developing mind, it is going to affect you in some way. It's how you're learning to like resolve conflicts and deal with situations and interact with other people. And I think there's a lot to be said around how that affects you as even a bystander in that kind of situation, not necessarily an active participant. And even though you're, as you say, too young to remember, it's still gone into like your development, your psychological development, and how you've learned to assess and deal with situations. So I definitely understand that there's some traumas that are involved with that. And
sure.
My mother, it sounds like, went through some very similar things with being like a single parent raising two kids. And interested in hearing more about how that story kind of plays out for you.
Well, it's fascinating you pointed out more of an observer role. And although I was directly involved because I lived in the same household, my younger brother was the shithead of the family. And it was always him that seemed to get the wrath of my mother's anger and stuff. And so I witnessed some awful things that would be classified as abuse nowadays. And perhaps it was. But I was too scared to ever engage or ever question that type of behavior. But sometimes there was one time I forged my mom's signature, grade 6. I remember it, and I got the spatula, man, to the ass, and that hurt. And and I'm not questioning her disciplinary actions, but my mother and my brother's relationship was vile told, to say the best. And growing up, and you mentioned as well formative years and stuff. And I've only recently, and I say recently, within the past 5 years, have really realized, and even like for the past 10 years, really realized that my upbringing kind of had a negative impact on my ability to have personal relationships with people. I would lash out angrily and say awful things when I was angry. And through loss, I've through my dating life, unfortunately, I've learned each relationship I've ever been in, well, this behavior isn't appropriate. And it would, like, one step at a time, unfortunately. It was a long battle. And, I find I still struggle a lot, even with my personal life and my friends and stuff. I'll lash out. But I have learned something, finally, at the old age of 29. This is last year's news. I finally learned to pick my battles. And my God, there's such a freeing sense of peace by not having to fight everything in your life or have a reaction to everything. Sometimes the way that was put to me was not my monkey, not my tree. And that is bringing a lot of clarity for my life. But, I found when I was through my formative years, which could be younger, but in my early 20s, when I started dating people and having relationships with people, I realized that, holy crap, I'm acting just like my mother in these situations, and that is not acceptable.
Well, see, that's
the clarity to try and change that, and I still struggle with that every day. I'd like to suggest that I'm a lot further along in that process, but holy crap, I did things that were the exact same way and not even consciously aware of it.
I find that very interesting that you say that, because a lot of the time, and like, I don't get me wrong, like, I love my father to death. I think he's an amazing person who's had his own share of like very, very extreme struggles in life, and in the same way has had to deal with like trying to figure out how to be, a good and decent person without having much guidance from like a family side of thing. Like I've never met my grandfather on his side, as far as I know. We disowned him and he died alone. So, not exactly
Right.
a great influence as like an
Right.
abusive alcoholic that eventually got kicked out of his own house by his kids. But in the same way, like he picked up some of those traits, I think, in terms of like dealing with problems and problem solving. And it's been an ongoing process with him just trying to work through things that, even now, I sometimes struggle with like his version of events and how things like played out. But throughout my life and my dating life, I've just had this like nagging feeling in the back of my mind where I'm like, just don't be like that. Don't be like that. Don't end up in the same relationship as your parents did and end up having like kids and then not being able to see it through, kind of thing. Like
Right.
if you're going to get involved in a serious relationship, like don't commit to anything unless you're absolutely sure. And that in itself has created so many problems for me, just because like for a long time in my life, like I refused to even make promises to people. I would not make promises unless I felt 100% positive that I could follow through on those promises and complete them, because I didn't want to lie to anyone. I
Or
didn't want to make them feel like they could depend on me and
yeah.
then fail them.
Oh yeah, exactly. Or you've probably been promised something before and then repeatedly been
Oh,
disappointed, and so you don't want
yeah,
to
like
interject that same behavior and stuff.
you got
And it,
something
I,
comes up, you have to
yeah,
reschedule, you're really
yeah,
looking forward to it. The next thing you know, it's like your whole weekend planned is gone, or you were excited to go do something, you've told all of your friends about it and like they're excited, then it just doesn't come to pass. And then
mhm.
it's like I have an old car. It's my dad's car. It's a 1967 Mustang.
You still
I've
have
never Yeah, I do. I've
amazing,
owned it since I was 16 years old. I've
amazing.
had it for over a decade at this point, and I've never driven it. I've been telling my friends since high school that yeah, I'm gonna bring it. It's gonna be my graduation car. Go to college, like, oh, I'm gonna bring it for graduation. Go to university, graduation kind of thing. My birthday, you name it. And
Yeah,
this thing is still sitting in a shop somewhere, absolutely nagging at the back of my mind. And at this point, when people ask about it, I just don't even talk about it, because like it's such a like it's such just a nagging feeling on me, where it's just like, why can not this one thing not just come to pass? Like, why can't I just follow through on that? And that has a huge effect on me as a person, because like I'm a people pleaser by nature. I get that part from my mother, and like I just want to make people happy all the time. And the thought of like lying to them or being unreliable in any way, shape, or form is absolutely devastating to me. Like I do not, if there's any aspect of myself I appreciate, it's that I am reliable. If you ask me to do something and I agree to it, I'm gonna be there. That's oh, so yeah, I can feel that. And I'm sure you've been through sort of similar in terms of
yeah.
having those sort of
I
like
see. I'd love to ask you, well, why do you still have it? But I'm sure that's a very complicated, and you may not even know the answer to that either. You know,
the car.
yeah,
It's because it's like 98% complete, and I've just invested so
okay,
much into it at this point in
yeah,
time. And honestly, if it wasn't for this isolation and coronavirus thing right now, where I'm just like, it's just one more thing. It's just one more
yeah,
thing preventing it from getting done. I'm like, the guy literally can't go into work to finish it. But yeah, it's
yeah. No, it's fascinating. You talked about your dad earlier and say, things that sound like it handcuffed you before. You're terrified of making a promise. When I was growing up, my mom dated a lot, and actually she got married a lot. And mom, if you're listening, I love you. You
yeah.
did what made you happy. I don't hold anything against you. But my
Mhm.
mom married and divorced several times, and I think she's on her sixth marriage now. And so that can be shocking for a lot of people. That's my
Mhm.
norm. And so growing up, I always felt as if I didn't want to date people because I didn't want it to fail, because I didn't want to be embarrassed, because I didn't want to be like my mom. And so I had this commitment issue
Mhm.
where I was like, well, no, I don't want to date you because it'll fail, and then I'm just like my mom. And well, let me tell you something. That led to me dating people and it failing.
And you being just like your mom. Yeah.
I'm not
Right?
married
Isn't
like that, but like, hello, Dick. It made relationships fail because I never made someone feel valued enough that they were worth sticking around, or I never made someone important enough in my life, to want to stick around with me. And I don't blame them. I've been with some wonderful people in my life, but and ladies, I'm sorry. I've finally figured it out.
Yeah. It was similarly like I felt like, oh, sorry.
That's okay. I felt like that handcuffed me for so long until I realized what I was doing. And then I needed to give not necessarily a blind faith, but I needed to take those risks, because I would build, I let these little doors in, and then they get to a big wall that wouldn't be in, you can't get through, because I would refuse to let it go because of fear. And it was crippling. It was crippling for years.
I honestly, like, I find it so interesting that you kind of say that, because like for me it's the same thing. Like I feel like I've just been so careful that like it prevented me from taking any of the risks I would have needed to take to like break away from that thing that I knew, which was, based on my parents' relationships. And it's strange because like in similarity to your mom, as you say, like my dad dated a lot. I had stepbrothers and stepsisters that have like come into my life, and like I had them for like 7 years, and then they disappeared. And then like I had another set, and then it got to the point where, it was like, oh, this is so and so, this, and it's weird that you just like you stop caring at some point. Like my dad got remarried eventually, and then re-divorced again, kind of thing, and then was with people, and you stop caring about them in the same way. Like my mother, like in contrast, stark contrast, my mother was with my stepfather for, well, ever since they, like, it's been decades right now, kind of thing. So like ever since I was a kid, they've been together, and it's just been one pairing kind of thing. So like, my stepfather really came in as like a father figure, but like these other people that my father was dating sort of didn't have that chance to develop, because it got to the point where I learned not to invest in them. Like it was like
they're going to leave you eventually.
Yeah, and I think that came through like mentally to me, where it was like this weird, it was like a battle in my head where it's like, okay, well, clearly it can work out if you do the right things in some way. But like the other thing that doesn't like work out is like these people that aren't worth investing in. And it was strange because my father got remarried, but my mother and my stepfather did not get married. So like in my mind, like relationships kind of ended at dating. And that actually came back to bite me in the ass in some of my long-term relationships.
Right.
Because in my mind, we were like in the perfect scenario of just like, oh, we're common law, we live in now. And like that is all this needs to be. It doesn't need to go further, because maybe getting married is what puts pressure on your relationship to the point where it breaks. Whereas like my mother and my stepfather are doing fine. Well, lo and behold, they got married later in like a secret private ceremony where it was just the two of them. But again, they didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So I've almost always downplayed anything past dating, because it seems like it just puts too much on the relationship and sets you up for failure. And like that's got to be a negative like line of thinking in my mind that I just have to like get over. It's really really weird.
You kind of disassociate with people, and I mean, you said you when it comes to, that's the pinnacle of a relationship, is dating and common law. You don't need marriage to get that happiness, but there are people who would like that, and that's what they want, and that's a way to express themselves and whatnot, because they grew up in a different environment where that supported marriage and supported a long-term thing. I don't know about you, but have you noticed that most of your friends are separated their parents are separated? I find I connect mostly with people like that because they get it and they understand.
Like it's weird. There's very few people I know who are together, and I find that the people that I gravitate towards most are the ones who have like families that are still together somehow. I don't know if that just fascinates me, or if I'm just like I want to like learn from them or incorporate that like life lesson into like my life. But like I find that the people that I sort of spend most of my time around with now are people who have have been brought up in that kind of like wholesome, like my family worked out and this is how we work through our problem scenario. And I find that they also tend to have better like problem solving skills in terms of relationships and things. So yeah. Not to
Do you ever feel like you weren't good enough for that?
Oh, all the time, constantly. It's a constant thing where it's just like I honestly felt like I was cursed for the majority of my life. I'm just like it got to the point where I felt bad for dating people because if I met someone nice enough, I felt like they didn't deserve to be with someone who would cause as much stress and like emotional devastation as I was likely to in the future. And that was based off nothing
Yeah.
other than the fact that like I assumed I was my parents'
Yeah.
child kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like I must be bringing this curse down. Oh, what if I had kids with them and like passed this trait on to my children? I'm
Right.
just injecting this like negativity into the world and they're gonna suffer growing up. And
Continue on the process, right? Like, I'm just
yeah,
gonna breed one of me, and that's what's
it's
gonna
like
happen.
passing the baton, but you don't want the baton, but it's like, here,
Yeah,
take it.
it ends at me, so no, I can't be happy, and then no one will be sad, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, if I just went out and like isolated myself in like a far off region of the world, I would be sparing them from my issues.
like Antarctica.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And even then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave me to be the one to pollute Antarctica with bad relationship mojo. But yeah, it's a thing that I think many people struggle with. Like I look at friends and family that I know, and even just like people who are my age now who have started families of their own and had kids. Oh my God, so many people with kids. Like,
Dude, everyone's
dear
breeding. Everyone's breeding.
dear social media, please stop baby photos. Like, also we're in isolation, so if you could just stop posting like happy photos of you and your family hanging out, that would be great. Because I live alone, and there's no one here for me, and I made my own little Wilson,
Yeah,
volleyball, except it's a dodgeball, and like that's all I got to talk to. So,
dodgeball.
if
With you.
yeah.
I tried to carry on your legacy of dodgeball and res life, dude, and I just couldn't get the attention like you did. You were a magician with that, but I hear you, man. It's funny, I don't know about you, but I've been practicing involuntary celibacy for the social isolation, COVID-19 nonsense.
That's a good name for it. Involuntary celibacy.
Well, and I saw something online that just made me laugh so hard. It was one of my friends shared. It was like, "Oh, don't all you fuck boys wish you locked someone down now?" And I was like, "Oh, it's not my fault because of things and whatever." But yeah, it's a real thing. Today's environment's a fascinating thing, and I think that's a lot. I don't know. I think this isolation is good for everyone in a sense that I feel there is a strong sense of community growing between us that I haven't felt or seen since the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Not to the height of patriotism that is going on right now, but I really feel people are being supportive of one another and just reaching out, and I feel like we're just coming together a little bit. And so I think there's a blessing in disguise there. But it's definitely lonely. Like I got my cat. He's great, but like I have a conversation with him and he doesn't really respond back in English. So like, okay, man, whatever.
It's a warm body.
Yeah.
So actually, it's interesting that you say that though, because I've actually been viewing the whole isolation thing as a very positive experience for me. And a lot of people might argue that because, and I'm not going to argue with the fact that there's fear and danger out there. And like, I feel terrible for, the elderly who feel scared to go to like the grocery stores and anyone who's immunocompromised. But in terms of just an ability to have some kind of like introspection and reflection upon like my own flaws and the things that I've wanted to correct about myself and really like get to like figure out who I am. There's been no real greater time for me to just sit down and do some self-directed learning and pursue projects that I want to pursue. And I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it's very, I guess, a very popular and famous book. It was recommended to me by some very wonderful people who live in New Zealand, who I love very much. and oh yes, it's great. I could talk for a whole other podcast episode on New Zealand, but for time's sake, let's just say great people there who live a very wholesome life, have a very great family structure, and are very much like people that I aspire to be more like. So this book called The Power of Now, I think was an exciting kind of revelation. And I've been listening to it just as like an audiobook in the mornings. And it's nice because it gets you to focus on a lot of like the roots of where our fears come from. And when we talk about like our families and our relationships and how they've affected us and like who we were as children and who our parents were, one of the main sort of teachings of the book is like being present in this moment and disconnecting yourself a little bit from like the past and the future, because the majority of our fears come from, you know, fixating on either the past or the future and like what has been done or what will be. And the thing is, like, we don't really have past and future. We have memories of the past, and I know that my memories of the past get a little more obscured every time I tell a story. And I, you know, there's a detail that goes in there, and if you tell a story enough, like it's proven that like that will actually replace like an actual memory. Like if you lie enough and stick to that lie, you will actually come to believe that that is a legitimate memory with like imagery associated with it and everything. So we don't really have the past and we don't really have the future because the future hasn't happened. So all we have is the present. And when we get to those points where we're feeling things, like it really guides you to sit back and take like an observer's role as to what your feelings are and disconnect from, you know, letting them take you over, essentially. Like, you aren't your feelings. They're happening for some reason. So it suggests that you just sit back and kind of be like, okay, yeah, this is happening. And it's not necessarily me. It's something that's happening within me. And I just need to sit here and sort of like see it make its way through, but like not really respond to it or analyze it too much in depth, because then you're giving it like power over you, sort of. So it's been really neat.
As you put your phone behind you, speaking of power over you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's well, one of the main reasons I wanted to have these like chats and start this like podcast was because we're so influenced by external forces in our lives and things that aren't really under our control. And we put so much time and energy into thinking about things like the past and the future are one things, but also, you know, the opinions and perceptions that we have of the people around us and how they affect us and how, you know, that contributes to our lives can become a real problem. You know, social media is just terrible. It's not good for you. Yeah. So as I was saying, the whole thing is like we have so many external factors in our lives that are affecting us in negative ways. We think about the past, we think about the future, things that are out of our control. They're not important. But there's also like the perceptions of the people around us, like, you know, things that we can't, like, I could never control what you think about me. I can do my best to try, but
Right.
you know, ultimately the way you think about me, like if you don't like me when you first meet me, you may never like me just because I talk in a way that you find annoying.
Yep. Sure.
You know, and so social media is a similar thing, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to like start this sort of podcast, was that like I very much disagree with it. Like it's this platform for sharing things, but people don't share the important things. I like to use this sort of iceberg analogy where we see like the top 5 to 10% of the iceberg, and that's like the best moments of people's lives. That's the bit that's out in the sun, gleaming, sparkling for everyone to see and look at and be like, oh, what a majestic piece of nature that is. But the other 90 to 95% of their lives is buried under the surface in the dark, cold water of the ocean. And like that's the struggles, that's the stuff that people like aren't showing. So when we look at the top 5 to 10% of someone's life, like the best parts, and that's all we ever see from them, and everybody that we know is posting this, and it's just happiness and like vacations and sunlight and smiles and friends, socializing, we start to think that that's everything they do. And we look at our own lives and we're going to our 9 to 5 jobs and working in an office, and we're not necessarily like feeling, you know, great about ourselves. Like we're not living our dreams. We start to feel really bad by comparison. And it's just,
or everyone's highlights isn't your norm, and so therefore you're less than. right?
But that's exactly it. And you're like, how did they get to this social status? And like maybe they took one vacation and they're just drawing out these like posts of themselves on the beach throughout the entire year.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like if you see that throughout the entire year, you just assume that that's always their norm. And yours is like, I'm stuck with bills, I'm in debt. I don't even know how to make food because nobody taught me how to make food. I have no idea how to file my taxes because the school system sucks at teaching me anything valuable.
Yeah.
Like, where was that course? Where was the here's how to just do your friggin' taxes
Yeah,
course?
never.
Yeah. Yeah. We expect you to file your taxes every year, but we will give you no training in it.
Yeah.
None.
If you're wrong, we will charge you and come after you.
Yeah. Thank you, government. I appreciate that. So yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of like our lives now is we have to deal with this like onslaught of information that's basically just like hyped up lives of everyone else and compare it to our own, and none of it's realistic.
No, exactly. And it's a plethora of people as well. So you continue to see everyone else's highlights, and you're like, well, how come I'm not consistently on vacation? Well, the reality is because not everyone's consistently on vacation. That's just what you're continually seeing. Or why do I see everybody having babies or getting married or this and that? Why am I not doing that every weekend? It's because that's not what you can do every single weekend. But it's a consistent.
I hope you're not having babies every weekend, people. Like,
Hey,
please,
some
just
people are
no.
magicians. Yeah. Yeah. I know so many people having babies right now, and so many of my friends are and it's like, oh man, it's nuts. It's nuts, and happy for them, amazing. But I can't even imagine my life with a child right now because I'm so far back. Like I don't even have a girlfriend, so for me, like that's like so far down in the future. I can't even comprehend it right now, and
Yeah,
it's another
that's
thing.
not even a reality for me at this point. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I can't even imagine that at all.
I'm sitting here trying to survive isolation by bringing someone into my apartment and the only option I have is if they're a live-in partner because we have like a guest thing going on, obviously with the whole school arrangement. They want to support the government and their directives, but yeah, I'm like, does anyone want to be my live-in partner? Like we don't have to be in a relationship. Like I'm honestly just like taking all applications right now. I will
Right.
do interviews. Like that's the thing. If you're worried about job security and stuff like that, like you don't have to pay rent here. You just have to entertain me and cook. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's a weird thing. And like I consider that one of my flaws personally is like, I have been unable to throughout my life develop like what I would say are meaningful, intimate relationships, like relationships beyond friendships. Even
Yeah.
my friendships I find questionable. I have literally always felt like the guy on the outside of the group, That's I've never felt like I belonged as part of the group. And I'll never forget what this one guy said to me in high school. I went to public school with him. I went to high school with him. His name was Daryl. And Daryl comes up to me one day and he just says, you know what, Jay? You're like the drifter in the school. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, well, you're like, everybody and everybody knows you, but you're not a part of like any group. And I was like, wow, that's
heavy.
it's kind of that
Yeah.
sucks to hear. You're like you're in high school, you're in your prime, like these are supposed to be like the best years of your life. There's no responsibility. I don't like
Yeah.
pay taxes, like it's my time to run around and play in the sun, and yet I don't have like a group of people that I associate with more than others. And I think that's persisted throughout most of my life, and I'm just
Yeah.
like I don't know where my people are, and I think I'm on this like journey to just find that out because I can't, and it gets harder. Oh my God, like you're 30 now, making friends, it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny, and to capitalize that on, I had a friend say something to me that I went to school with, and she once said to me, and I went to school with this lady for 2 years. Her name is Jess. She's sweet. I think she was a paramedic for a bit, but now she's into nursing and stuff. And she once, like, we were playing, we were sitting on the edge of a hill, and we were drinking twisted teas, and we played like a baseball thing. This is like near the end of our thing where we all left to go do our preceptorship. And she turned to me and she's like, Chris, like, we've been in school together now for a year and a half, and I honestly know nothing about you. Like, you're so distant. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, you you'll have intimate conversations with people, but it's never about you. It's always about them. And, I know nothing about you. And that stuck with me. And I remember exactly where we were sitting when we had this conversation. And it had a profound effect on me. And, and it was because I guess I distanced myself from people as a part of a protection. And it's funny, I agree with you in a sense that I associate myself with a part of multiple groups where I'm kind of like my little lone ranger and I do my own thing. And I talked earlier before how full time is approaching me. And right now there's two sides, because when you work full time, there's one side that you will never ever see these people, and there's another side where you see these people all the time. Yeah. And it's funny because one group of my friends are called the Fleming crew, and they're all the people that went to school together, and they're kind of their own little clique. Yep. And I somehow latched onto into this clique. And then there's my Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering side. We're friends that hang out, and they're both on opposite sides. And as full time is approaching, people are asking me, "Well, which side do you want?" And I'm like, whatever. Either I'll have my Fleming crew or I'll have my D&D crew. And it's fascinating because I undermined the fact that I will never ever see, as long as I'm on this side or until there's a rebid or thing. Yeah. I will never see the other side unless I take time off. Wow. And I'm kind of like, And it's not to say anything negative about either group, but it's just like, well, I'll just be more friends with other people, and I kind of don't have. I feel like I don't have this loyalty, or I feel like I'm just easy. It's easy for me just to cut bait with someone because that's just how life is, and I can just move on from that. And that's kind of when you talked about when someone called you out on something that you're a drifter. I feel like, crap. Maybe I'm a bit of the same. I'm a bit of a drifter as well, and.
It's actually interesting that you say that, and like that your reaction was because I'm sitting here right now in the residence building that I first started my post-secondary career in. I remember that I shouldn't say career, but like post-secondary life. Graduated high school, came here to college, lived in this very building for 4.5 years. Right. And somebody was like I came from a small town. My town was 16,000 people total. Yeah. And I was even on the outskirts of that. So, small town. And then I moved to Toronto for the first time and was like, okay, this is the big city. There's a lot here. And in the first month or 2 months, my family would call and ask oh, has it hit you yet? Has it hit you the differences? And I was honestly no. I didn't care. There was no difference to me. I was I thought there was going to be this big moment where I was I'm in college now. Everything's going to be different. This is exciting. And literally nothing changed for me. I was just I went on with my day. I met some new people. And I think because I was so used to drifting, and I'm going to use that as my terminology now. I was so used to drifting that I naturally just walked into some social groups, met some people, met a bunch of people, didn't really stick with anyone. I literally have one friend that I've stayed in contact with for this entire time since the school. His name's Jurgen. He lives in California now. He's an amazing person. And I'm glad I picked up at least one permanent connection out of that. But it was never a group. There wasn't a group that I stuck with. And when I left after that, those people just disappeared. Yep. I moved on, and there was a new group of people.
Yep. And you accustom and you accommodated, and all of a sudden it's they're your highlight and stuff. And even I do have a group of friends from high school that I do still associate with. But I remember one time I finally showed up for a dinner. They were all going out, and they all called me out and from a guy's perspective, now I don't know how a woman may feel, but from a guy's perspective, when you have a bunch of bros telling you that you need to make more of an effort to be a better friend or be you know what I mean? It's
that's heavy.
That's me. They straight up were dude, you do not make an effort with us. You need to try more to be our friend. And coming from guys, it shows a couple things. First, they really care about me. Second of all, I sucked as a friend. And third of all, I needed to make a difference and a change. And I'm finally working on that now because I've been, I finally achieved my career and whatnot, and have the time that I can give to them now. I don't have to be so distant. But it's an active process to try and connect with them on a daily basis. And sometimes I feel myself I'm like, oh wait, I haven't talked to Mike in so long. I wonder how, other than like a general group chat, but that's not impersonal. It's like, oh, here's a meme, and now we're gonna try and make puns for the rest of the day. No, like, when was the last time I asked him how your day's going, man? Like, what's going on in your life? How you any romantics? Like, how's work doing? How are you doing? You know what I mean? You drinking more? You drinking less? You're eating healthy? Eating? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and I find social media, to draw back to there, it's so easy to become impersonal with people, and I can just like a Facebook status and we're connected. You know, I haven't had a conversation with you for God knows how long, but we're connected because I know that you had a baby, or I know that you got married. I wasn't at that wedding. I haven't seen your baby. I haven't seen you go to the first day of school. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just there hanging out in the background. And I feel like it's so disconnected. And I know social media is a part of that, but I also feel like that's kind of how I am in a way as well, because Jess told me, she's like, you're so distant. And it was like, what do you mean? Oh, crap, maybe I am. And
so have you found any ways then to sort of address that now that you're aware of it, which is difficult, especially coming from a group of guys, because it takes guys a lot to get to the breaking point where they're like, we're going to talk about our feelings, but
right?
as a group, right? Like, not even in private anymore. Like, this is a group responsibility. We need to have an intervention, guys. But you know, it sounds like that's been raised and brought to your attention now. So I'm wondering if there's been sort of progress in that now that you're.
So there has been, and all it really takes is, because it's funny, because we're so easily connected with our cell phones. If you think of that person, a text message, send them a message on Messenger, send them an Instagram message. You know, do more than just. If I think of someone, I take that phone that I'm holding in my hand 24 fucking hours a day, and I will message them and ask them, hey, how's your day going? Or, hey, whatever I just saw on social media, let's talk. And I directly message them, and I try to engage in a conversation. And I've been working on that, and it's only been recently that I've been trying harder to do that, because these people mean something to me in my life, and I'm trying to make the effort instead of just them always coming to me, because that's not a good way to be a partner or a friend, especially in today's world, right? You know, and I've been shit at it sometimes, but I'm really trying. I'm really, really trying.
Now, I've had some difficulty with that myself, because like in this whole social media thing where I'm just like, I'm sick of it. I hate the pictures. I hate seeing people who are just happy, you know, there's nonstop, because I feel like it's just not good for me mentally to like look at this nonstop and just like, it's great that people are happy sometimes, but I don't feel like I'm getting the real person. Like, I feel like it's lying to me somehow. So I have made the efforts to like totally disconnect from social media. And I've done so, and I ironically had to reconnect to social media in order to like do some of my own business type stuff.
Right.
But you know, when it wasn't about that and it was about just personal use, I very much tried to like get rid of Facebook, shut off Instagram, take breaks from it, you know, just move away from that, maintain professional accounts only. And one of the things that I found was difficult for me was I started to find that like without these social media and communication channels, like I just didn't hear from my friends anymore. And I was like, well, this is crap. Like, I have crappy friends. Like, I haven't heard from them in a month. You know, I haven't heard from them in 2 months. And like, well, why would I bother putting in the effort for these people if I'm not going to hear from them? But at the same time, I wasn't reaching out to them either. And I had this like expectation that like it was their job to reach out to me.
You actually closed off a form of communication to them, so it was only this interpersonal thing where if they're, and it is outside of mine, but I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I was like, you're on point with that. It was like, I shut down like our primary form of communication. I had to actually start and check, like, I changed phones recently. Like, do they even have my number? Like, what if these people can't get a hold of me, kind of thing? And like, sure enough, like as soon as I turned Facebook back on, I logged in, and like, it wasn't just like thumbs up and likes, but there was like messages from people being like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, how you doing? Like, and like legitimately were trying to reach out in the way that they thought was most natural. And I had just kind of cut that off. So it becomes very difficult to even get away from it when you're trying to find like a more, what I would say, wholesome and fulfilling form of communication communication between people, where it's not just like a like, but something a bit better.
You need to follow that up with a message. And what's funny in today's environment is a text message is more intimate than a direct message on a social media platform or even a phone call. I love phone calls. I think they're really, and that's something I've been trying to, but
It blows my mind the amount of people who don't like phone calls. Like it absolutely shocks me. They like feel like they feel put on the spot
yeah,
because it's like I have to answer this now and actually do something. Like that's
yeah,
insane.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find I like phone calls mostly when I'm driving. You know,
All the time.
yeah, love to make a phone call when I'm driving. Hey, maybe I should call you when I'm driving. It'd be one of those
You
phone
you
calls.
absolutely should. Like when I am driving, like I will drive back and forth between Toronto and Waterloo regularly, or Toronto and the Belleville area. And
Okay.
the so that's like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And
Yeah,
I guarantee you I am on the phone for an
yeah,
hour and a half to 2 hours of that. And it's just like it is the time when, and like I'm going back to like, the being present and in the now. It's I don't have distractions. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm literally stuck in a car in one spot, and I just have time to focus on making a phone call and connecting with someone and talking to
right.
them. Whereas like every other point in time during the day, I feel like there's something else I could be doing. When you're in a car, you're stuck. There's nothing else you can
Doc,
do. You got a
yeah,
hands-free option or the radio playing the same shit it's always played, and
yeah,
that gets real tiring real
yeah,
fast.
exactly. And it's not even your playlist. It's like I don't really care for this song, but I guess I'm going to listen to it.
No,
Oh,
no, exactly. And I mean, like, thank God for Spotify. Like, it's really helped out recently. I haven't had to use the radio recently,
yeah,
but at the same point in time, you're you're hearing the same stuff generally. You've got the same taste, and if you do it long enough, it's just like this is a great time to get some connection with someone from outside, because I can give them my full attention, and just like, we can have a real conversation for like an amount of time that I have set aside that's more than 5 minutes. Like, hey, just checking in, how are you? So
yeah.
that's nice. And I think it's a thing that we all as people need to get back to more, is having that dedicated time to like attend to ourselves and attend to the people who are important in us, or in us, in our lives.
It's been a while, eh, bud?
Not going there. I don't want to have to dust things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and yeah, and I feel like part of this isolation has allowed people to withdraw into themselves and try and maybe reflect and have that capability of understanding who they are or what they want to be and make more time for themselves. Whereas we're always go, 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 go beforehand. And so now there's nowhere to frigging go. You know, it's a sad world, and you're gonna laugh. I've been reading Lord of the Rings.
No,
So
I love Lord of the Rings.
okay,
I'm not
so I'm
gonna,
at the point now where they just get to breathe, and I'm
yeah,
reading about in a fantasy world how they went to a bar and ordered pints. And you
yeah.
know the world is a different place when part of the fantasy realm is going to a bar and having pints.
That's amazing.
That's a
Uh,
part of the fantasy world now, and yeah,
no,
yeah,
no, but I love all the fantasy stuff. It's good. It's a good escape. Honestly, I wish, and I'm glad actually that there's becoming less and less stigma around it because of like the whole Lord of the Rings thing, and like Harry Potter's popular, so like wizards and knights, and Game of Thrones really helped out.
Game of Thrones.
Uh,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, it brought it to being like cool again, whereas it's really just it's a great escape. And like you look at sort of an ideal world, but a lot of the time with like a more simplistic kind of lifestyle than what we would normally have, and you're just like, oh yeah, why can't I just go get some fresh food from the garden, talk to my neighbors, and do my chores for the day, and then read a book and go to bed. Whereas
yeah.
now, like it's a
You do
lot
that.
more complicated for us.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. But I was wondering, just before we kind of like close up here, if there was any other like pointers that you might have had for how you've dealt with your personal struggles in terms of helping you be successful, because you're at a point where you have, after a long journey, all the way to Mordor for you, finally delivered the ring to that volcano, and you're on the verge of throwing it in, and getting what you want out of it. So what do you think the big pits and falls and the high points were for you in terms of like finding your way to success despite the struggles that you've had in life?
So a lot of it was, I think I got advice from somebody who I looked up to, and I never really looked up to somebody before in my life. And his name was Andrew, and he was about 5 years older than me. Part of my mother's history was she dated men, and this was one of her boyfriend's sons. He came to live with us for a bit. We actually worked together at Lone Star and stuff. We developed a really, really good and strong friendship.
He was
And
Python.
pardon me?
He was Python.
He was Python. No, he was actually Longhorn. That was his call name.
Oh.
So people would ask him why is he called Longhorn, and his response was because Thickhorn was taken. So quite the character.
Oh my god. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, digress. This guy, I debated on moving to Fleming or moving to Peterborough and going to Fleming College. This is the year before I met you. And I was like, well, I can't leave my mom behind. And he told me that if you want to be successful in life, you need to be selfish. And one of the best decisions I ever made was moving to Peterborough and finding my independence and finding myself and growing, because being a Reds Life RA and later on an SRA, really helped me grow as a person, really helped develop some interpersonal things. And it was that advice that was able to help me definitely be successful where I am in life. And a lot of these things just talk about your flaws, but some people do, and I, myself included, I had to be selfish with myself and with my time in order to be successful. I had to work very, very hard to get to that level of success, obtain a career and continue working forward. And there's a lot of sacrifices I made while doing that. I lost relationships, I lost dating partners, I lost a lot, but it was that struggle and that battle with myself and saying, you need to be selfish with your time and do what you need to do to become successful. That's okay. It was okay. When I finally got hired at the age of 25, that was the pinnacle of my end of my 5-year plan. I always had a 5-year plan. This is it. This is that. And I got there through really hard work and a lot of self-sacrifice. And for the past 5 years, I've been able to reflect back on some of my toxic traits and some of my growth that I've had to do. And it's a slow improvement day in and day out. And it is still a consistent battle to be a better person each day and not. And part of that battle is accepting you for who you are and accepting that you can't be perfect, and you can't be, and so a lot of that, even after 5 years, I've still grown, I've changed as a person, and we can argue how my job has changed me for the positive and the negative, but a lot of it is taking the time to improve yourself, and that takes sacrifice, and that takes being selfish. And I know maybe that's not necessarily a lot of common advice that people give, but I think if you want to improve yourself, you want to improve your surroundings, and you want to improve who you are as an individual, you need to be selfish with your time and who you want to be, and you need to work on yourself and put down the cell phone, put down and get rid of distractions and work on that goal that you want to achieve. And it can be achievable. Like, God, man, I got a really demanding job, but I got a really, really good job, and I'm very blessed to have it. And that takes each and every day. I still need to keep up on my studies. I still need to keep up on what's new. I still need to keep up on my mental health. It's recognizing that, hey, that call bothered me, and admitting that, and then seeking the assistance or help. And that can be something that's reaching out to a friend, be like, hey, like, what's going on? Can I come to your cottage? Let's hang out, or let's do something. It's a daily thing to make sure that you're okay. And then when you're ready, trying to accept someone else into your life as well, or other people. And that was the best advice a singularity ever got, was be selfish with your time.
Yeah, I think you've made some good points there, because a lot of people view being selfish as like a negative quality, and it is if you continue to be selfish forever, right? But if you don't focus on yourself to begin with, you don't have a foundation to build anything else in your life off of.
You can't help someone if you can't help yourself.
No. No, and you just end up dragging them down. Like it's you
Yeah,
become an anchor instead of a sail kind of thing. So you
absolutely.
need to build yourself up first, which means there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Yeah.
And being selfish, there's a time and a place for that. And it's if you're not in a position where you feel you are your true and best self, you know, being a little bit selfish and to help along in that process, I think being honest with the people around you
Yeah.
is important. You can't like I wouldn't just be selfish and expect people to understand it, but if you have like good reasoning and explain that to the people
There's a
around
balance.
you, yeah,
There's a
then
balance.
you're going to be okay with it. And
and
I
and
think
accepting that there's going to be trials and tribulations and there's going to be mistakes along that path
yeah.
is very important to achieving your goal or achieving where you want to be. No one's perfect, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to apologize to people you give a shit about. You're going to have to apologize to people you care about, and you're going to have to care about
Hmm.
people along your path of selfishness or self-directed learning, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
think you're okay with that.
I think it's said best when we consider the statement to err is to be human. And I don't think people take that seriously enough, where it is your flaws that make you who you are and make you
Absolutely.
sort of like distinct from others and
Yeah.
give you something in your life to work towards. So you need to sort of appreciate them, identify them, and just understand that it's going to be a process and everyone's going through that process in their own way. And I
Yeah.
think with that, we'll probably end today's podcast. So I wanted to thank you for coming out here and sharing your experiences and stories. I'm overjoyed to have you on to share that you've found success at the end of this like long road with its many bumps and twists and turns,
I'm still
and
not, you
that
know,
you're
30, I'm still not there yet. It's still an everyday battle to take a breath and not react immediately to something, and acknowledge your flaws and try to and embrace them, and but try to make improvements on yourself. And it doesn't end. It doesn't end just because you've gotten to your career. It doesn't end.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Chris. Again, this has been the Flawed Cast, and we hope that you've learned something today, and you hope that you've got some useful information to take home with you, and just feel better. Feel better.
You, Jay. Looking good, buddy.
Bye now.